So here we are again, April 28th, for the first 5 chapters of The Sum of Us by Heather McGee. So this partnership of the Jackson District Library with Racing for Equity was what? When did we create this? When did we decide to kind of partner for this? This was about in November.
Well, I mean, how far back do you want to go?
Yeah. We'll just go back to the beginning of this one right here.
The beginning of this one, probably November.
Yeah. So in November, we kind of came up with this idea of how can we continue to advance racial equity in the community. And so we put our heads together, several of us on the Racing for Equity Committee, and decided that having these conversations would be the next logical step in our evolution. Thank you. Okay, so Racing for Equity, our mission and vision and values are: we are a group of passionate people working together for equity in Jackson County through fair and equitable practices. Our vision is that we desire to see Jackson County as a place where people of color thrive and succeed, making it an inclusive place for all. So our values are based on that word desire. We value diversity. E, we value empathy. S, we value social justice. I, we value integrity. R, we value restorative practices. And E, we value engagement. And that is just the Racing for Equity group that, again, I'm a representative of, and actually all of us, we all are part of that. But and here also is a library, our library connection also, and Calvin. So our panelists, we did have a more full panel tonight. A few people got sick. Some people had some family emergencies that came up, but trust me, the panelists that we have tonight are still going to rock it out of the park. So we have Ann Neff Ross. We're not gonna talk about how long I have known Ann and don't pronounce it correctly. We're not gonna talk about that right now. Ann Neff Ross, and we have Davida Quinn. Would you all like to give maybe a minute introduction of yourselves?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So my name is Ann, and I'm the Carnegie branch manager here at the library. I have been a librarian for 12 years, but really down here at the Carnegie branch, 5 years. And I've been working with the Racing for Equity group and its various iterations since 2018. So it's challenging work and so very rewarding.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Davida Quinn, and I am a case manager for the Jackson Housing Commission, and I am also a trusted advisor for the county. And I am the liaison for several businesses that I own. And I too am a member of Race Forward. We have been working so hard to work in this community for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're so glad that you're here with us tonight. I hope you all had a chance to read the first 5 chapters because we get ready to get in deep. So let's go, Ms. Keisha.
So our meeting agreements, we'd like to just have some agreements to kind of orient us all to this space. We really want it to be a space that is safe for you, one that you feel comfortable to engage in. So we have meeting agreements simply for that reason. So what we've come up with is if you feel comfortable, please state your name and the chapter or the idea or the theme that you're commenting on. Last month, when did we do this? January. When we did it, not everybody stated the theme, but it still kind of worked out for us that you didn't have to. So, but if you have your theme in mind, go ahead and state that. It'll kind of orient us as to where we might need to look at our notes if we need to. Please be respectful of our differences of opinions, racial equity and racism, and et cetera. That topic brings forth a lot of different opinions. So we're going to be respectful of our differences of opinion. Everyone's experience is valuable. Please speak on your own experience. Please remain on topic of this book or the themes found in it. Some topics that are related to racism and race may not be found in this book, but if it fits the conversation and you want to ask a question about it, feel free to do that. Because again, it all kind of relates to racism, this book does. We acknowledge and agree that racist ideas and practices are in our society and have a significant impact on our collective success, which this book really, really talks about. And then respect our facilitator. That is me. I'm going to try to keep the conversation going. Usually I'm pretty good, but if I start singing up here, then that it means it's probably time to, let's talk to somebody else. Let's give everybody else a chance. We really do want to hear everybody's voice. We want everyone to be able to share, ask questions. So for that reason, we might say, can we use, limit the discourse or the lecture that you're giving. So that's me. I am a founding member of Racing for Equity. I have co-chaired the group from its beginning, which was in 2018, November of 2018. We formed as a result of going to Race Forward, Facing Race. It's a national conference that one of the biggest racial equity organizations hold every 2 years. So in 2018, we a lot of us from Jackson actually went. Calvin, I think, was there, and Davida and I met there. Ann and I met there. A lot of us met there. And so when we came back, we decided to remain a group. I volunteered to be the secretary, and somehow I became co-chair. And I have been co-chairing it since that time. I am a lifelong resident of Jackson. I'm a racial equity educator and a consultant and a community servant. I volunteer extensively throughout our community. I chair the Racial Equity Commission at the city level. Some of you all may have seen that in the newspaper. When it was coming about in April of 2020, we had our first meeting then, and we're actually enjoying our first year's celebration anniversary this past April. And then, of course, I was instrumental in the creation of Racial Equities Commission. Racial equity is a passion of mine. I'm also a mom to 6 children. My oldest is 20, my youngest is 8. I do a few things in the community. You probably have seen my name in the newspaper maybe on occasion. There's some stuff out there, but that's who I am. We're going to get right into this book because we really want to hear from you all. We really want to be able to engage. That's the fun part of the conversation. That's actually what we are here for, to kind of engage back and forth. We are going to watch a very short video right after this that kind of will orient us. We didn't want to put too much on our panelists tonight because, like I said, 2 of them did drop out. So we do have a short video that we're going to watch that kind of also will orient us. And again, if you were here for the first conversation, we mentioned that us giving a review of each chapter kind of helps those who are here for a pop quiz and you're not ready for it. So the little video is going to be like the pop quiz, getting you prepared for it. Not really a pop quiz, so no fear, people, no fear, no anxiety. So zero-sum theory. Many white Americans view race as a zero-sum game. There's an us and a them. Okay, and what's good for them is bad for us. It's never, we're never this abundance mindset. It's always a scarcity. If I have some and you try to get some of what I have, then I'm not going to have enough. That's this idea that Americans have. I got to have all for me, and you can't have any. This rationale animates our public policies even today, when those who benefit from our country's drastic economic inequality sell the zero-sum story to block public support for any collective action that would benefit us all, from universal health care to even living wages. Why is this harmful? These are the thoughts, a question that you may want to keep in the back of your mind. Why is this a harmful or false way of looking at race and public policy? And have you experienced zero-sum thinking in your own life? Realistically speaking, all of us have. We've grown up in a society that, and I'm not trying to answer all the questions, but I want you to feel comfortable to just be yourself tonight. We've grown up in a society that has taught us this. Sometimes when you're taught one thing and you are not often given a different view and perspective, then that's all you know. And so that's kind of how you live your life. So don't feel bad if you're like, yep, I've been zero-sum thinking. We all have, okay? All right, are we ready? What do I have to do?
Yeah, so the video will be the author speaking. And so just know that this came from the author's website. So if you are interested in more in-depth thoughts from her, she has quite a few videos in her collection on her website.
What if I told you that the solution to economic inequality isn't economic policy, it's tackling racism?
A lot of progressives think that if we talk about race, that will end up dividing us. But the hard truth is, we're already divided. And we're divided because there's constant race talk in our society by conservatives. It's just that they're not talking about race expressly, they're using dog whistles. Think about a term like illegal alien,
Makers and takers,
welfare queen,
entitlements,
freeloaders,
people who just want free stuff,
inner city crime.
drug testing for welfare recipients.
What color faces do you associate with those terms? Or think about terms like the silent majority, the heartland, real Americans, hardworking taxpayers. What color faces do you see with those terms? Lyndon Johnson in 1964 is the last Democrat to win a majority of the white vote, and he won in a landslide, campaigning on the promise to end poverty in a generation. And yet, at the same time, Racial anxiety is rising in the South because of the civil rights movement. Conservatives sense that they can use racial appeals as a way to win votes. And just 8 years later, Richard Nixon wins in an even bigger landslide, dog whistling about law and order and the silent majority.
And then Ronald Reagan brings it home.
You start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 1968, you can't say nigger, that hurts your backfire, so you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now, you're talking about cutting taxes, and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things, and the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. We want to cut this, and we want is much more abstract than even the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than nigger, nigger.
He's able to convince many Americans to actually side with the preferences of the 1% by making fear of people of color tied to our very idea of government.
I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
And if government is the problem, Reagan said, then trust the marketplace. And easy as 1, 2, 3, you have the policies that have created massive wealth inequality, all sold to the American public through a narrative of racial resentment.
Racism is the belief in a hierarchy of human value, that some people are just worth more than others. And that doesn't just affect the people who are seen as worthless, because in a country where our fates are linked, as long as we believe in a hierarchy of human value, some of us will always end up on the bottom.
Everything progressives want, reigning in Wall Street, building a new infrastructure, cleaning up the environment, free college, everything progressives want depends on us having government on our side. And it's exactly race that leads us to fight against each other, that leads us to distrust each other and to resent government, and in turn, to give control over government to the very rich.
Some progressives right now think that if we solve the problems of economic inequality, racial disparities and racism will go away. I think it's actually the opposite. We can't solve economic inequality and change the politics of our country without addressing racism.
Thank you. So we're going to jump right into the conversation. I'm going to let our panelists give some of the first words, some of your first thoughts, maybe on either on that video or on chapters that you read. And then as questions are generating, I will run around with this. It's not working, is it? Okay. I will run around with this non-working microphone and let you speak in it.
Well, I would say the reason I chose that video is that it very succinctly gets at the heart of how central racism is to the conversation, that it takes 5 chapters, lots of detail and lots of policy history for Heather McGhee to pull apart and kind of illustrate how it was built. I am struck every time by the center when you hear those words like straight from the conservative strategists. It's so offensive. So I apologize for not warning people that that was going to be in the video, but it's also just very affecting that that is our history and we can't pretend that it's not there.
Davida?
I have something right off the cuff that I want to read. The exclusion of free people of color from the mainstream American economy began as soon as Black people emerged from slavery after the Civil War. So just think about that. As soon as the word free people, a free human being really didn't mean free. It really didn't mean free. Right. Still today, still not free. So as Heather McGhee gets us through these 5 chapters, there's so many things that was kind of gut-wrenching to me. cement a whole pool, P-O-O-L, so that Black, Negro, African-American children could not swim in that pool with white children and with white other humans. It just put a pit in my stomach. Let's get to it.
So we'll start out with, just any initial questions that you all have, any initial, either that can be about the book that you read, the chapters that you read, or anything from the video that kind of bubbled up, the thought that you had. Feel free. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say that this book was very eye-opening to me because having been raised in a white neighborhood by white people, I had no idea these things happened, that we were taught. I kind of always wondered like what the deal was with like Black poverty and stuff like that. And I knew about slavery, but I didn't realize, and I knew there was racism, but I didn't know how my background predisposed me in that way. And also the zero sum thing, that's really true. I mean, I know that I have felt that. I mean, that's another thing I think I kind of learned as I went along. It's scary.
Yeah. It is. It's super scary when we consider the impacts. We consider the whole pool, as Davida mentioned.
It's so selfish.
Yes, and not just one pool, but many pools across the nation being sealed up so that Black people can't enjoy it. But when we think of the collateral damage, white people also couldn't enjoy it. That whole zero sum, like, if I can't have it all, you can't have any, regardless of the impact that has on me. Yes, ma'am.
Senior in high school, the first year of busing.
Okay, wow.
And it was interesting in my high school because I was growing up in the suburbs. So my senior year, lots of students left and went to private schools, but I was not aware. Busing, we had people of color in the shows, and I had said to my parents I wanted to have a cast party at my house. And then I thought, well, I better tell them, and there will be some Black people at the party. And I watched my father kind of go, not sure that's a good idea in the neighborhood. And I just remember like being gut punched because my parents never raised me with overt racism. But I felt like, who are you? And obviously I did not have a party. I went off to college my freshman year to Farmville, to Longwood College, and Farmville was a community in Virginia that shut its schools rather than integrate. But my freshman year was the only year I went there. I took a picture I'll have of two little kids walking in on campus, one little Black child and one little white child holding hands.
Now, when you went in high school, did they integrate? You said busing began that year. Is that when Black children came to the school?
Right, and it's interesting because my talking about the busing man, of course, it was a huge talk. We're fixing our stove, and my mom, he was an African-American man, and my mom said to him, "What do you think about this busing?" And he said, "Ma'am, my children have been bused all the time." And she said she never realized that they lived in a white, on the outskirts of where the neighborhood school would have been a white school. So his kids were bused an hour away so they wouldn't go to the white school. And my mom, she looked like a deer in headlights when she heard that. What year was that? 1970.
Thank you for sharing.
I think for me, chapter 4 was really a mind-blowing moment because I was going to college in 2008, 2011 during that recession, getting a degree in political science. None of this was discussed. I did not learn any of this. This is my first time learning this. And it just kind of blew my mind. I also grew up in the 90s where we talked about we've overcome racism, colorblind, everybody's on a level playing field. You're reading this and that is just so not the way. And not only are Black people disadvantaged, but when she talks about how many government funded programs really put the white middle class where they are and gave us that edge. And then, you talk about all the predatory loans, and it just was oh, it all made so much sense as I kept reading. Everything makes sense now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. What was chapter 4? Did anybody know the title of chapter 4? I have it in my thing, but.
Something about the community.
Okay, yeah, but just hearing you speak, just about one, we're not being taught these things in school. How, then learning that this is actually how the middle class, was kind of propelled into being a middle class, how we keep Black and brown individuals in, a marginalized and a disadvantaged position. And then when we consider the fact that we didn't know this, and then we look back on the thoughts that we had about these things, and these people, prior to having this knowledge, we almost can get mad. Like, why didn't you tell me? You had me sitting here thinking that these people were the welfare queen or the, the person who just wants to, do bad things to get ahead, versus we've actually put them in a position that they, in order to feed their kids, I work in the community a lot. And one of the women that I work with, Selena Taylor, she does Partial to Girls, and she talks extensively about her story. And she was a teen mom. So I think she might have had her first child at the age of 15 or so. She has an extensive story that she shares, and it's actually beautiful to hear. But she talks about some of the things that she stole first were Pampers and socks and food for her babies and for her sister. I think some of the first time I think that she said she stole was around the age of 9. And she was stealing food. But we criminalize individuals who are trying to survive. And don't consider that that's what they're doing. You're Black and therefore you're a criminal, or you're brown and you're a criminal. Any other thoughts?
Actually stole the wealth of the entire community and Tulsa.
Black schools, yes.
Where they profited on it for years. And yet it's never, ever taught in school. It is not. And I had to be in my 50s and 60s before I ever even heard of that. It's amazing.
Ask a question first. So how do you feel now? Now at this age, you see the light. You see it. How do that make you feel right now?
Very bad and very ashamed. I had nothing to do with it, obviously.
Right.
But that great of a wrong could be committed and everyone turned their head and didn't pay any attention. Makes me feel bad. And I think that reparations are due. I think overdue. Yes, but
where's my quarter? Tawana Brown, and I gravitated to what Davida was saying, that take it all the way back to being free slaves. Who did all the work back then? Not the master. Who got all the credit for the inventions? Not the slaves. Who worked from sun up to sundown or longer? Not the master. Went into that house at night and raped those slaves. Why do we have such a mixed race? It happened back during slavery in the beginning. I feel like drop the mic. Here you go.
My name is Lavinia. And do we have a lot of mixed race from slavery? Taking some steps. We haven't gotten there. If I dare to think like a young white girl, and that's a big dare, to want to engage with a Black man, I'd have to ask myself why. What is it that told me to do that? Right or wrong to do that? And a lot of the parents, as you were saying, you didn't know anything about racism and about Black and white. Your parents didn't talk about it until it was brought to their attention. And that's kind of sad. It's kind of sad because you should have known one way or another. They kept that from you.
I was just thinking about, even Davida's question, how do you feel now? Like I mentioned, oftentimes it's incredibly angering, one, to not be told these things, because our government, our education system has a responsibility to, they force us to go to public schools for the most part. It has a responsibility to teach us the whole truth and nothing but the truth, the entire truth. Because then when they don't, then we do grow up not knowing how we are impacting, how we are actually contributing to systems, how our thought processes are one way when they should be another way. that thought process that's over here and that's not very healthy, it contributes to a continuation of racism. You know what I mean? Because we're thinking, lock them all up because they're just, they're these evil people, when in actuality, like, we created this, Another thought that I wanted to just share, while this stuff is angering, it's disheartening, it makes us feel bad. One of the reasons why we keep having these conversations is because we want to acknowledge a lot of us just didn't know. We did not know, we didn't know. Yes, as humans, we do feel, some sadness. But then we also want to acknowledge during these conversations that you don't feel sad for too long. Just acknowledge, it happened, it's not good. Now, what do I do now to not necessarily fix? Because again, we didn't personally, maybe contribute. And actually, I'll change that because a lot of us have personally, unknowingly contributed to these things. But how do I move forward and making sure that I'm no longer doing that? Because again, if you don't know any better, you can't do better. But once you do know better, how do you do better? Yes, ma'am.
Is we are intentionally going backwards in our education system and deliberately not allowing our children to be educated. That's far worse than.
You said, I didn't, you said.
Yes, that's right.
You're right.
That's terrifying, because I thought we were making progress until the last 4 years.
So I did not read all 5 chapters. I started reading it. It got very heavy for me.
Yes.
And weighed me down.
Yes.
And I started thinking immediately, what can I do? And I'm trying to take on the problem myself and take on the whole thing all at once. So yeah, you don't realize that there's an issue because I'm not in a community with, I see the same people who look like me, who have the same beliefs as me. So that's, one thing that it's yeah, it's all of the things that I do, all the people I see, all the places I go, it's with the same type of people.
That's totally, thank you so much for sharing that. It's such a real experience that so many people have. You know what I mean? So thank you so much for sharing it. It is heavy. It does make you, it makes you want to, just I don't want to see anymore. I don't want to see anymore. I'm gonna get him right back.
There's a thought in my mind as a poet in my community is to express exactly the feeling you kind of expressed about being affiliated with your community and then not being directly impacted by the things that you're learning about the conversation we're having. And so for me, because I live in my community, right, where I hear gunshots, I live in my community where the neighbors in my community are living in the worst conditions of poverty in our city, right? I live in our community on the south side of Jackson, right, to where I have to interact on a daily basis. So it's readily prevalent in my life since I've been a child, right? And my interactions outside of that is so rare, right? Like coming here, for example, is me stepping outside of my community, right? But my everyday daily life is different than being in a space like this. So as a poet, and I'm making that reference back to poetry because as a poet, I kind of tend to express the pain, afflicting the community so often, so much, because I live it every day, that people think that my poetry is a reflection of negativity, of always being down and so and so, right? But I'm expressing the overall state of the condition of my community that's 24 hours a day, 360. We don't really have too many happy moments in spaces and places in our life, right? And so as a poet, as a conscious voice in the community, as a poet, I feel it's my responsibility to continue to echo that consciousness so that people are aware of what's really happening on a daily basis in certain people's lives. Some people have the opportunity to be in spaces that's free from that regularly, sometimes all day. When I made the equation before about when we talk about why our community is so heavily policed, right? In the Black community, Black people who are living in poverty, their everyday needs aren't met in their refrigerator. Their everyday needs aren't met in their bank account to take care of the things they need between check to check. So in the Black community is forced to come out into the community every single day to make ends meet. That requires a lot of traffic, constantly in and out, over here, meeting other people. When I was a child, my mother had 2 sons. She used both of us to go to different people's houses to get different food items. We needed help. And she would take the food items she had, the food items we got from other neighbors, and she made us food. That required us to get out of our house as children to circulate through our community to get the resources we need. So our community does that every single day. That's why it's a high traffic concentration in our community. And at times, because we have to do so sometimes underground, meaning that sometimes it's illegal, like what she talked about with Selena did, it's illegal, and that brings police presence. So that brings an over-criminalization in our community, not criminalization because of crime itself, but because of the crime of poverty that induces this situation. So when I express myself, I express the feeling that you have a safety. I express the feeling that I don't have a safety in my community because all of my everyday interactions are unsafe. You know, like I work in the community, live in the community where gunshots echo regularly. And so that comes out in a very aggressive, painful. I had a quote I was going to read too. David Mensa said, "Pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice."
Follow-up question. I know you've been waiting, so I apologize. I just wondered, in Heather McGee's book, she talks a little bit about the difference in perception from the white community, seeing it as a zero-sum game, and the communities of color not seeing that the same way. Do you think that situation you just described of being out in your community and seeing everyone together as a resource is a difference when you explode that perspective to like a national political policy viewpoint?
You want to answer?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the reason why there's opportunity for exploiting the issue for one way or another, which we've seen in the video, how, it's easy when you have control of the narrative. Situations like that we're discussing now can be exploited to the negative or to the positive, within positional power to shape that narrative. And so for people like me in my community, I think it's incredibly important to be aggressive in not only challenging that narrative, but actually rewriting and reshaping the narrative. Because we have never really been spoken for. I mean, we have always been spoken for, right? Someone, research, data analysts, sociologists, everyone is speaking for us, telling us our problems, telling us our position in life, who we are, what our history is, etc. We've never been in positional power to actually assert our voice. So when someone like Keisha uses her power at a board table, for example, she's out of place. And that's why people will tell her, you need to get back in line because you're out of place. When someone like me, a Black male figure with a past criminal history, right, comes and speaks up truth to power, right, the narrative is what we saw in the video. They no longer have to call me a nigger. They can easily put me in one of these other categories of terminology that then classifies me and labels me in a certain place where the perspective from the white community or the Black community shares that connection to how that scenario unfolds.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I do, thank you. And as I'm listening to you, I remember recently I did hear you speak at a meeting that you addressed on helping Black children, that I felt was so powerful. That was beautiful. Thank you for doing that. And I've lived long enough that I've lived through a lot of these situations, from the swimming pool that got built in our neighborhood. And by the time I moved away and went to college and everything, this book brought to light what really happened there. And busing, I lived through my children going through busing through Jackson Public Schools, and my husband and I were on the side of the group that was pushing for busing, and that divided Jackson in really a big, deep way that still, finally, I shouldn't say it like this, but finally, some of the people who were so dominantly against busing and were actually vile are dying and they're gone. So it's like, I had a talk with Keisha and I said, you know, I hope we all don't have, I have watched it happen through politics. And when I became really aware was actually with the Kennedys at first. Well, made a big switch with Ronald Reagan. And from that day on, the way they versed the politics taught all people of need to separate Black and white instead of uniting to make a difference. And my husband and I used to say, I don't get it. Why don't people see they're voting against themselves?
Yes, that part.
Yes. And so that has maintained this, the way it was worded was worth more. You know, they felt they were worth more.
Yes.
And that was all, this whole situation. So I do really appreciate your outspokenness, and please don't don't sit down. And thank you.
Thank you.
And I hope as a result of it, all of us become, you know, I know that I have with my friends and family and buying them books and, you know, if they don't always agree with what they read and they think I'm should sit back down.
You stop talking.
But, you know, it takes all of us. And we are one. That's what is and the whole planet's on our side right now.
Yeah.
The planet, the stars, everything is on our side right now. So we just need to do it.
Yes, thank you. That's you know, as both of you are speaking, you know, that's the idea that some of us are worth more than others, just enough to not unionize. And she spoke about this in the book, you know, just enough to say, you know, rather than join forces with individuals who are really conditions are the same as mine, especially poor white people, you know what I mean? Rather than join forces with these Black people, you know, and unionize so that we can have better working conditions together. If I get paid, you know, just 50 cents more than you, that makes me feel better. And I would rather stay over here. Or if, you know, if I can beat you, you know, and I'm a sharecropper, maybe that was the title that they had, you know, versus a slave, you know, because that makes me, I have a little more power than you. You know, that's white supremacy being created and established, you know what I mean? Then I would rather, you know, maintain my distance, maintain my separation from you than join forces. And this is what this book is all about. I was just thinking even, I don't know your name, but I don't have to know it, you know, but this young lady, she's speaking just about the heaviness of the book. I had, at least, I think it was chapter 2, and I can't remember the exact story that she told, but I literally had to put the book down. I just said, I cannot, it was so heavy for me. I eventually picked it back up, but I felt that as well. And I think probably any of us who are reading, if we're reading any of these books, we're gonna have times where we have to put the book down. You know, sometimes some movies I can't watch, you know, some police encounters I cannot watch. You know, some stuff is just too much, you know, to imagine my body, my Black body experiencing that, or my children experiencing that, or my brothers, my sisters experiencing some of these things. It's just, it gets to be too much. But even as we're talking about just our responsibility, you know, to one, acknowledge our own feelings, our part or non-part, but then what do we do going forward? You know what I mean? And I know we'll get to the end of this book, we'll have more of that conversation of what to do going forward, but just acknowledging where we are in the moments that we're reading it, and then not staying there, because that can be really difficult. You know, it's that cloud gets heavy, you know, and it makes it hard to see the sun that's shining out there. It makes it hard to see that there's, you know, maybe some hope somewhere, and it's really in all of us, you know, and I'm so bad with names. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Sue. I'm so bad with names. I'm gonna have to bring like name things. I literally have a problem with remembering names. Please do not hold it against me. Put it to where you're supposed to put it, where it's not really. Is it your head or your heart? Wherever it is, try to my head, not my heart. Because I really mean, I remember faces. So if I'm ever in the store, I'm like, hi, just say Keisha, so I know your name. But even as Sue was saying, you know, just us, you know, our responsibility towards this subject matter, our awareness of the zero-sum game, our, you know, ability to kind of move forward. Let's kind of keep that in the back of our mind as well. Now, you know, I'm this person that I can't mention as well. I'm this person that, you know, listen, we need to have the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Because how else are we going to move forward without it? So, you know, let's have the full conversation, but I'm always trying to go somewhere with it. You know what I mean? I'm always this, I'm never just like, let's just wallow in all the pain. We got to know what the pain is so we can know where our passion comes from. I'm a very passionate person. In case you hadn't noticed, that's why I talk fast. I'm slowing down on purpose right now because I just realized I've been talking fast. But I'm a very passionate person because, you know, every day that we aren't moving forward and acknowledging what happened, somebody's still being harmed. And it's our marginalized children, it's our vulnerable children. Somebody's still being desperately harmed. And if we're not addressing these issues,
about us trying to do better and changing things and understanding people is to go break bread with somebody you never thought you would before. There was a church on the news recently where they stopped singing all their music and sang everybody else's. I saw this on Comedy Central on, what's his name? Trevor Noah. And the pastor at this church said that was the best service. Those were the best services they'd ever had, singing Black music, gospel music, and it was just it was different for them, but they enjoyed it a lot. So that would be my suggestion to everybody here. Go have dinner with somebody you've never had dinner with. Want to come to my house? Call me. I'll feed you. We'll have a good time.
Hi, I'm Marie Bonkowski. Just wanted a couple comments to the last couple of comments referring to being in an area that's the same that you are. I've worked in Jackson for a number of years, retired now, but was probably a great, well, I even worked in the Detroit area prior to that. So my work life was great experience for me for getting to know people different from myself. Home life was a little bit different as far as the neighborhood I lived in Westland when I worked in the Detroit area, and I live in Onstead now, but had the last 20 years working in Jackson. So I understand where the young lady's coming from. You kind of go home and you don't have that diversity and you're kind of with, you know, friends, relatives the same. But I think then that's where you really need to kind of get out of your comfort zone and try and, like I said, break bread, or if you can't necessarily break bread, come to things like this. Get out to the community volunteering. I'm doing a little more volunteering in the Adrian area so I can get to know some of that community a little bit better. And then the thing also that just reading, and what I've gotten a lot more interested in is reading history on slavery, the Civil War, and books like this. And again, it does anger me too for the fact that why weren't we taught this in school? You know, our generation maybe was taught this in school, came to understand the history, maybe we wouldn't be at the place we are right now. You know, so that's what's kind of like, geez, you know. But again, I understand why it was kept for us, so that those who had the power and the financials could stay in that power. So we got a lot of work ahead of us. Thank you.
thank you. Definitely have a lot of work ahead of us.
As a social worker and a church musician for 100 years, college in Detroit. It was a Catholic girls' college. It's closed now, but they keep up their education piece. They were the first ones to do Montessori, and they sought out the Black community. Then, when I was in undergrad school, so I graduated in '64, we met and he came to stay with us. Martin Luther King's friend, starts with an A, my brain is gone. Tabernacle, thank you. There you go. And it was just before the summer march. So here I am, a white naive woman with a good heart and no brain at all about what was going on. No brain at all. And all of a sudden, in the spirit, I could feel horrible danger. And so I went up to him after this talk. There was one light bulb in that church basement, one light bulb. And I said, Reverend, please, don't all think this way. We don't all think this way. You're going to get hurt. Young lady, if not now, when? There is no answer to that. But everyone who came to town came to our college and talked to everyone. We knew the situation was coming up, but these were nuns that talked. They went into the the neighborhoods on purpose. We had to do outreach as social workers. One of the things we did was tutor. And I'd never heard of Black English because I was in social work. So I hadn't a clue. I could not, she tried so hard. But the accent of her verbalization, we could never perceive the same thing, but I knew what was wrong. And now that I hear other pieces, I am finding my sadness in the churches. In those times, our cardinal, in the Catholic Church, we had a huge council. We were demanded to pay attention to the scripture. Never get out of it, it was never different. I don't see that now, and that can't go on.
Did our panelists have any thoughts they want to add? Okay, I'm right back. It's gonna end.
Oh, I just wanted to make a comment about public libraries for a second. So public libraries are a space where people do interact, different classes, different backgrounds, but we have a lot of work to do to be more welcoming so that everyone feels comfortable here. And so reflecting for me on the chapter about public pools, I'm grateful for this building that I am privileged to work in, but I also would like for people to let us know how to make that building be less imposing and more welcoming to people of all backgrounds. We can control the way that we respond when folks in need come in our building. We do our best to make sure that we approach each request with respect and kindness and as much empathy and equity as we can. But there are not enough places where people have that opportunity to come together. And we are here for the community's needs, but sometimes we get stuck in our own little bubble. So help us get out.
Davida, any thoughts?
Real quick, we used to have a branch on the east side on Orange Street. When we were kids, thank you. When we were kids, we would go in there and sit in a circle and read. And I mean, we would walk up there. We lived probably a quarter of a mile, half a mile away, but that's what we did when we were kids. I mean, this is like in the 50s, y'all. So, but it was wonderful to be able to go in there and feel comfortable. Even on Orange Street, across Michigan Avenue, at our age, we still had to cross that big street, and we did it all the time. But we had a great time at that library, and I saw a picture of it somewhere, and I took a picture of it with my camera because it's a great memory that I have. And the library has always been a good place for me. My grandson, my oldest grandson, who's 33 now, thought this was school when his grandfather would bring him.
I too have fond memories of the library, picking it back off what you said. And I was a single mother of 4, and the library was my place to go in Saginaw. That basement at Hoyt Library was the thing where my kids learned to read. It had computers, which we didn't have at home. It had a librarian that was just for the kids, and they took them on field trips and they gave them food. That was a plus for me. That was a plus for me to be able to take my kids somewhere free, somewhere safe, to be able to check out books. Back then, VCRs, so that'll tell you about 30 something, you know. But Mary, I know that in all that we do,
can you move mic up to your mouth?
and all that we do, and all the things that we have been through in our lives and things that we have witnessed and been a part of, they are the sum of us, right? We are the people who we are today because of what you went through, because of what you went through, because of the things that we all have went through. It made us who we are today. And today was a hard day for me. Now I've read my 5 chapters. I discussed it with my daughter. I was up at 3 o'clock this morning on Facebook talking about this book. I just couldn't sleep. I just couldn't get any settlement. And I had a resident today who needed some help. And I got a referral on yesterday, a white 85-year-old woman, sick, needing help, nobody there but me. And I brought a coworker along with me to help her. And she said, no, I don't want you. Don't touch me. I want the other one. I was like, I'm your case manager for this building. I'm here to help you. Don't touch me. I said, well, I'm the only one here to help you. You go get the other one. I said, the white one? Yeah, the white one. I said, okay. So I finished helping her do all that I could do. I could not pick her up off the floor by myself, but I knew I had to get ready for this thing. And the Lord just said that you're going to have to help her. You know, see, sometimes our own self want to say, bye. The older Davida part was like, see ya. But the human in me knows that I can't leave her on the floor. It doesn't matter how she feels towards me. It's what I know in myself and that human at 85 years old on that floor, and she needs help. I had no choice but, to call a CPS referral and the ambulance to take her so she could get some help. So we have to understand that through this book, and I've been through more than chapter 5, that as we understand it, that this world, we all going to go through this world and we all going to leave this world. And when we do, is what did you do while you was here? Who did you help along the way? What change did you make for yourself, for your family? What did you do? That's what it is.
For some of us, that just makes me think of the title, they drain the pool. This lady's in a situation where, she needs help, and rather than get the help that she needs, I'd rather suffer, which is pretty interesting. I'm coming right to you.
I'm Sylvia Brown. I was reading this book. Wow, it's been, it's kind of an eye opener. And I had also read another one, my other lady talking about white fragility too. So yeah, I've been paying more attention to this stuff, especially for the last 5-6 years. I'm a daughter of a German immigrant and American father. And I could remember my mom telling me about when she came to the United States in the late 1960s. She was talking about how when she was carrying me just a few months before I was born, walking her poodle down downtown Detroit while the riots were going on, and she's only been in the country less than a year, and think, wow, what a strange place. Why are they setting their trees on fire? But they left her alone, and then when she got home, the dad's like, you were where? And then later when they moved down to Greensboro, North Carolina, I mean, they called her Hitler lover, Nazi, and all this kind of stuff. It's like she was born 2 years after World War II ended. As a result, it's like my brother and I had to downplay our German heritage just to get along at school. I mean, it didn't stop us from being bullied, but I think but especially when it transferred to Grass Lake, where, I mean, the Michigan Center schools, they're rival. So it's like, oh, another strike against me. So needless to say, I didn't exactly feel, I mean, I went to school, mostly all white kids, maybe a token Black child or Chinese or Mexican, but that's just it, a token. And I can't say that I feel particularly warm and fuzzy for some of these people. Like I went to my high school class reunion, and I'm like, that's it, I'm done. Thanks for reminding me why I don't come back. So anyway, as for me, it's like, and had went to college, and I had some assistance from my aunt and uncle. And so went to worked at a staffing agency for 20 years before it closed the doors, and then had to apply for unemployment for the first time. By that time, I've heard from other people, oh, they got a year of unemployment. I was lucky to get 6. And I was applying for 10 different jobs a week, more than what unemployment was required. It's like, oh, you only have to apply for 2. It's like, I wanted to get back to work. It's like, my lifestyle is being affected here. And then with all this stuff going on, and then reading I've never really thought racism was a factor in this. And then somebody told me online to go choke on my welfare when I was on furlough a couple of years ago due to COVID. We'll just leave it at that. And I'm thinking, what the hell? But I think it's kind of go all the way back. Why does it have to be this way? It's like, yeah, by the time I got there, the pool was half drained. It's like, I busted my ass trying to get back to work. It's like, I finally got back to work. I was constantly between temp jobs, driving an hour out of town just to go to work, and probably losing more money, because this was the message that I received. I mean, anxiety and depression that I've had to deal with, the heartburn and everything else. It's like, why?
Your comments, so often, all the collateral damage, the things that we, and I'll say just my white brothers and sisters, that they have to experience, not alone, but just even, the job hopping and the downturn in the economy. And she speaks about this in the book when she's talking about the housing crisis that occurred, how banks and these financial institutions practice their bad financial ideology and plans, and I forget all the best words to use, but they practice on Black people. And then they said, okay, let's go ahead and take this practice to the white community, and so they're selling these, I forget the terms, subprime mortgages, and then the economy turned out. Then these houses went through all these flops, you know what I mean? And then white people, as well as Black people. Now, one thing that she mentions, and I think is important to highlight, Black and brown individuals always get the shortest end of the stick. They're always getting the worst of the worst. But because our white brothers and sisters won, oftentimes initially, in those spaces where they do believe in zero sum, they're okay with, you can take advantage of these Black and brown people. That's okay with me, because I'm over here, I'm the slave or the person working in the slave field with these Black people, and you're giving me 50 cents more, I'm okay with that. Until it comes down to, then the white people in her example, and they began to lose their homes. And, so many different stories that she told in there of, different people who, lost their homes. One lady talked about, she had her home for maybe 20 years and she lost her home, and I think she went through a divorce. Just, all these different things that occur that we're all being impacted by, you know what I mean? And there's 1% of us who aren't. They don't look like us generally. Any of us in this room, you know what I mean? And yet all of us in this room can actually do something about it. You know what I mean? All of us in this room can keep having these conversations, make sure that we're voting in a way that benefits all and not just some, but those are just, just different things that, that really are impactful about this book as far as a zero sum story, understanding, how we are, even if it looks like they're the only ones who are going to be impacted by it. Why would we, as Davida mentioned, as human beings, be okay with that? Why are we okay with you suffering? Because I don't. But we've been sold that. We've been sold that. I like what Sue said as well. She said, some of them have to stay in their homes for a lot longer and not be in positions of authority. Sue said it nicer than me. She said they have to die off. Okay, I didn't say that. She's right, but I didn't say.
Those of us, 3 of us here, are making a unique change, we believe. We started a Lions Club. Lions have been in existence for 104 years or something like that. We have clubs in Jackson that have been here over 100 years, and yet there was never any Lions footprint at all in Southeast Jackson where it was needed. And so we started a club there, and we're not all Black, but we are. Yeah, we are doing something different, and Lavinia was just president she just finished her. Yes, she just finished her second. We've had a wonderful time, and we are making a mark in this community through the work that they're doing. Needed work. It wasn't an easy road to do. There was people that were very angry at me. Unsaid why, but because they always want to start Lions clubs, but I took a lot of flack for a long time, but we're beyond that.
This is an opportunity. I love opportunity. Every one of you to join our Lions Club, but we would be glad to have you. We have lost a lot of members in one way or another, but we still have 42 members today. And anybody interested, my name is Lavinia Shack Seals. There's only 2 shacks in the, there's no telephone book anymore. Call me, we will be glad to have you. Roberta was our guiding lion. She's pushed us through all of this. And I noticed that one of the ladies down there had a copy of the Blazer newspaper. That's us on the cover.
Glad that y'all mentioned that about the Lions Club. Because historically, right, community-based social clubs have been used to benefit, communities, progress communities, help support, sustain communities. And 99, probably 0.9999% of those social clubs were exclusionary, excluded Blacks, right? Excluded other people of color. Those exclusions still exist today, right now, in our social club communities in Jackson. So I'm glad to see that Lions Club is being bold, courageous to really challenge that social norm that helps maintain institutional racism, right? So I'm glad to hear that. And really, it made me comment about this. In the late 50s, the early 60s, Blacks started to begin, who were confined in segregation to their own communities, started to begin creating social clubs for themselves, right? As they began to be turned against themselves, and the turning of them gave shape to what many of us understand today as what we call street gangs. Most of us don't know that America's Black street gangs all started out as social clubs. They never had any criminal affinity, any criminal history. They were actually social clubs, gangs that we know today, like the Gangster Disciples, the Vice Lords. Bloods and Crips is a different situation that emerged in Watts, California after the riots, right? It's a different subset of what happened there, right? But in Midwestern and even East Coast, New York, et cetera, what we know to be street gangs, it started as social clubs because we didn't have opportunity to attend social clubs. And I want to make the connection to what we know to be today as hip hop, right? Hip hop, the emergent culture, kind of started off as a Bronx response to the lack of social status, to the response to what was happening with the gentrification, new urban renewal in Bronx, New York. And it created opportunity for young people in the Bronx, New York to begin socializing, forming little social clubs that began to emerge into entertainment, self-entertainment that turned into a culture of music, style, dancing, graffiti, all kinds of different things that ultimately emerged as a result of the lack of opportunity to be a part of real social clubs, right? So I'm glad to see that. And I think that with the Lions Club, what you're doing there, we need to really put emphasis stabilizing, infiltrating other social clubs in our community to bring about parity and real equity.
And I guess for me, it starts with people like this woman here. I love her. I love her to pieces. She, forever and a day, she would do anything for me. I would do anything for her. We come together, but Lavinia and I were both part of the Jackson Host Lions. And then Roberta approached me and said, have you ever thought about starting your own Lions Club? My thing was, what you talking about, Will? She invited us to meet with from the Detroit area who talked to us about starting our own Lions Club. And it was like, And at first it's like, well, thought we were gonna come together, we were gonna mix. And Roberta was like, yeah, but in the meantime, think about starting your own focus on the southeast area of Jackson, where this host lion club has not even thought about embracing your neighborhood. And then it was like, gee, that makes sense. And I am just so excited that she brought us to that point.
The NAACP. Yeah, they're still active and doing things in Jackson. Very important still.
One of the things I think that is clear is that we can't, and she talks about this in the book, we cannot do anything alone, honestly, us joining forces, a lot of times, I don't know if you all are on social media or not, but on my own personal pages, I often put stronger together as a hashtag, because we are actually stronger together. It does take the leadership of, especially specifically in our communities, we need to be leading in our communities, but we can't do it alone. So it's very beneficial when our white brothers and sisters will come alongside and say, hey, let me join forces with you, and you tell me, what do we need to do? She speaks about that in the book, the necessity of us doing it together. I mean, that's the whole thing with the zero-sum story. And that's the whole draining of pools. I'd rather not have a pool if you're going to be in it. That's the whole idea. We don't want that anymore. Any voices who have not been able to speak tonight, if you want to speak tonight, I want you to have an opportunity to. Anybody who has not already spoken that wants to speak. And obviously, we still have some more comments, please give them. But I do want to make sure that anybody who has not spoken tonight, if they want to speak, they can.
I'm Toby Berry. I think the part of the book that got to me the most, that actually had me texting Keisha because I was so angry, was the part about foreclosures and Wells Fargo, mainly because of where I work at Community Action Agency. The subprime lending, it happened here. We saw it here, particularly in our African American community in 2007 and 2006. And we at Community Action Agency were having people coming to us well before anybody put together a program to address foreclosures. And we were trying to stop the dam at that time. And so just that whole section, I was infuriated by, like, how is Wells Fargo still in business? How do you still get to be here after you caused all this damage? So that was
Thank you. It's so important to, even that, I love the question, how are you still here? You know what I mean? And then how do we as a community make sure that you are still here? How do we take our business to places that actually align with our values? How do we align our values? Do we know what our values are? You know what I mean? All those questions. And then, how do we stand on that? You know what I mean? Moving forward, that's definitely, I'm sure the last 5 chapters, there'll be more of that in there. But just, what do we do? 1 and 2.
That's a good thing to talk about the foreclosures. Well, I can think about like back when the economy collapsing. Well, we used to have the Bank of America branches here. Well, I can remember when I was in college that opened an account. It was Standard Federal Bank. They said you can have 50 cents in there. They won't charge you a dime. But then management changed, and then they went to LaSalle Bank, and then Bank of America, and then dealing with snooty bank tellers to say, oh, you shouldn't be coming in here to get a counter check. That's the second time this week. It's like she got me mixed up with somebody else. I said, no, I wasn't. And I did write a very strongly worded email about the situation there, but I never got a response back. But like when I heard about the bailout, I was pretty pissed about it. And so when I checked my account online, I was like, thanks. It's like my taxpayer dollars are paid for your bailout. Why the hell are you charging me $34 per transaction when you're stacking it on there? I mean, that they purposely stack it so that generate 5 or 6 of them. It's like at that time, I was dealing with a wage freeze. There was nothing I could do about it until I got my next paycheck. But it was a very good way to get them to drop some of the fees. But then before, kind of let them kind of talk down to me and thinking that was normal because that's the way things were. And now I'm kind of like, no. And I kind of looking at the bigger picture, think, hey, some things are different. And even where I work, like in a local manufacturing plant, it seems like there's more Black people on the night shift than there are on the day shift. And some of the day shifters, some of them are Trump supporters. I'm kind of like, yeah, gross. But that's another subject for another time. But it kind of makes one wonder about it. It's like, yeah, we're kind of, but with the separation, yeah, we're kind of losing out. We're kind of losing out on something here.
I want to respond to them, let him respond first, because it's some good stuff.
Trying to think of the sister name. You know the little sister last name Cotton. She drives a red BMW. Kelly's my age. She's older. She's probably in her 60s. She drives a little red BMW. I forget her name, but she came to my office a couple of years ago with a book from her aunt, story about her life. She's a very accomplished woman. Went to the military and accomplished things that we don't even know that she's connected to Jackson. She's accomplished things in America. You know what I'm talking about?
Jane Cotton, my cousin.
That might be her then. So you know who the aunties that wrote the book? Her aunt that wrote the book.
Jane wrote the book.
Oh, Jane wrote the book.
Jane wrote the book. You talking about her. She used to live here.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. In that book,
Yeah.
she has a story.
She was lieutenant colonel.
Yes, of a home on Addison Street, the street I live on now,
Yeah.
on Addison in Merriman,
Yeah.
that
Yes.
they purchased
Yes.
and they built, but they were actually denied that house because of the redlining. And she had the documentation in her book
Yeah.
about the denial of them to be able to purchase this plot of land and to have this home there in the area that it's in now. And it reminded me, of some of the stories I heard from her about her. She comes back to Michigan and things that she sees about our community and is surprised where we're at, that we're not much more progressively as we are, considering how far she came from where she was at. She looks at Jackson like, wait a minute, you should have bust down these barriers, that aren't bust down. When it comes to that, like Wells Fargo and institutions like that, institutions that have a history of failing our community, factual documentation, where are we at as a community, white, Black, anybody challenging this to close these, replace them, or whatever the case may be? It's just, it's that it reminded me of looking at that book and seeing that picture of that house that's on my street, a street where I own a house that I went and bought. I didn't want no mortgage. I went and bought it in cash just because I didn't want to deal with the mortgage process. I went and bought it right in cash, because I knew I would have to deal with the mortgage with no history of, credit. I had the credit, but I didn't have a history like that, worthy of getting a loan or mortgage to buy a home. So just really made me think about that. I want to find her and get that book out there, and Jackson needs to be circulated.
Well,
I can actually tell you the name of that book is called Determination, the story of a Black woman growing up and becoming a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force. But if not, we'll get it.
Thank you, Calvin.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what everyone's, because this is a chapter 4 stuff I was talking about, but just like, it got to me because I was thinking about these Black families who had to, didn't have the job opportunities. They were not given loans. So they had to work so hard to get these homes and to build this wealth. And they talk about how they don't, there is no inherited wealth. This is, such a big thing. And then to have this predatory lending practices and have these homes taken from them. To me, that was just like, it just was, it was bad. And it made me think that there's a lot of talk about all the progress that we've made. And then I think that we really haven't made that progress because that was like less than 10 years ago. Back to the beginning video, I think it was Atwater who was saying, the political strategy, people have just gotten sneakier about it. They just got better at telling a narrative and covering it up and saying people were just taking out loans that they just couldn't afford it. And it's just like, no, we're still having the same practices. We just are better at telling it as another narrative. And I think, we need to really wake up to that before we can work together and make
Yes, and I think you mentioned that earlier, just, who controls the narrative, who's able to frame it, they decide, but you are 100% correct. We've just gotten better at, hiding and fixing it and dog whistling and, just making it out to be something that it isn't, and we do need to get better at, being aware of that and then addressing that.
Oh, and about Wells Fargo, I agree. How are they still alive? Well, one way I can tell you is I do have a white male friend who worked for Wells Fargo, and he was, what they were doing wasn't right. And he was making a deal about it and he got fired.
I knew that. You're fired.
And now I don't know, when I say they, I don't know who they are, but it's happening to mobile home parks where wealthy people are buying up the mobile home park and pushing all the people who live there out to develop it for whatever they want to develop it for, to make another whole group of renters. They want to turn the whole world into renters.
Yeah.
I mean, in the story, not story, in this historical, because I didn't realize that they had practiced on the Black community and how they turned whole Black communities of homeowners into renters.
Yeah. I worked in the Michigan Senate for 18 years, from Engler through, I worked with the governor now. And they say the love of money is the root of all evil. Money, power. She references the work of lobbyists. It's unbelievable. To me, I hate politics because it's so dirty. I've known good people who tried to run and the party would not, if she didn't buck up and do what they said, they didn't support her, so she didn't even have a chance. Both parties do it too. The last national election, I think, is disgraceful because there was so much lying and bullshit, going on. And the thing I wanted to bring up was just that it's hard because we don't know what the truth is. You have to really work to find out what the truth is. And that's scary, I don't know how many times I voted and I thought, well, blah, blah, blah. I don't know who these people are. I don't know what they stand for. I don't know what their lives reflect. People like the guy who just bought Twitter. What the heck do people do with that much money? Nobody pays that much money.
So true. Panelists, I want to give you all some time to speak. We are coming to a close. Thank you all so much for engaging. It's been amazing.
In her book, I think I just keep coming back to this word, POOLS. It's still happening today. And one of the questions I have for you all is, what pools are happening today? What can you think of that's happening today? And how do we unfill that pool? Anybody? Healthcare. How do we unfill that pool, you think? Do we make it universal?
Yeah.
Make it so that it's free for everybody?
Why don't we?
Anybody else? What about academia? What about everybody gets a free education? Is that hard to say? All the student debt that people have ranked up their lives, they're still 60 to 70 years old, paying off a 30-year-old student debt. We have to pay so much to go to college to get that degree. And for sometimes we don't even use it in the work that we do every day. It was what was told to us. Oh, you have to go to college. Oh, you got to go to college. Oh, you can't do anything else. You got to go to college. But it brings up so much debt in our lives that right now is one of the things that's on the table. Is our president going to forgive some of the student debt? That's a poor, you all. What about programs in schools? In the rich, affluent schools, they got great programs. In minority, poor neighborhoods, you have no programming. So we have to talk about this, and she's going to talk about it a little deeper in one of the other chapters about where do we go from here? How do we unfill the things that's been filled that segregated us, that took out just not Black and whites. It took out women. It took out LBG. It took out different races and classes of people. These are the things that we're going to have to unfill if we want to see the next generations prosper. If we want them to have just a taste of what we may claim to be the American dream. Just think about that.
It's going the other way. They are so terrified. They are so terrified of the progress that's been made that they're doing everything to take it the other way now.
No.
In education, I think, and probably not just education. They're filling pools versus emptying.
Yeah.
And I'll just say before Ann speaks that, thank you for saying that. They're definitely trying to fill the pools, but we can stop it though. We can stop it. We're having these conversations, we're recognizing what they're trying to do, and we can be the ones saying, no, you're not filling this pool. No, your ideas, these dog whistles that you keep on, whistling for everybody to hear, we're going to call those out. We can stop it. You know what I mean? And so I'm grateful for these kinds of conversations because we actually, we're the people that, another saying that I put on my page often is there's more power in the people than the people in power. We put people in power. You know what I mean? We vote on them. And if we say you can't be in power, then we don't vote on them. You know what I mean? There's more power in the people than the people in power. You know what I mean? Some of us sit at these decision-making tables only at your direction.
Third party.
Yes.
I'll vote for you guys.
Right, we do need a third party note. We had one more, and somebody else right here.
Legislature did that for us 2 days ago.
Repeat that.
She challenged, I said, one woman legislature in Michigan challenged someone that accused her of something very vile. And she stood up and she spoke out. That's the only way we're ever going to change it is call it what it is. Immediately.
Regardless to how they try to change the narrative about, how individuals may stand up and say that this has occurred and they stand against those things. And then they'll come back and say, they were lying. Like Davida said, we don't do enough research in our community. We don't do enough research as a society. So it's rigged, and they're creating these narratives that because they have the power, they can create. But again, we don't have to let it keep happening.
Things are out there. I think you have to tell the stories and touch people's hearts because I don't know about the rest of you, but I tend to see everything through my mom eyes. Like when I look at universal healthcare, I think, how come if my child is sick, I can take my child to the doctor, but somebody else can't? That's just something wrong. Talk to any mom with a sick child, you would sit next to somebody who's got a sick child who can't get to the doctor. I have a hard time thinking they would think that was fair. And just on a personal note, when my daughter married an African man, he had to live in Detroit while she was abroad, onto a show about back when I was in college, or back, no, not in college, but after that, but before my daughter married Arthur, and it was about women, Black women talking about being parents. Your son go out at night and be worried what was going to happen. But in my head, and I could feel it hurt here, but it wasn't until my son-in-law was alone in the streets in Detroit that I felt it in my gut. Oh my God. Does he know what to do? I mean, he didn't speak the language very well, but like, does he know not to put his hands in his pockets if the police stop him? Does he know that? That was on a whole different level. And I wonder, sometimes it's going to be telling the stories and getting close as you can to people's hearts and guts.
a term came to mind, and actually I thought of it before I even came here tonight because I thought it might come up, and I want to read the definition to make sure that I'm getting it correct. But cognitive dissonance. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Hakeem? Cognitive dissonance. Is that correct? So I wrote the definition down because I thought it would be very important to this conversation. And of course, I can't find it. I have it on here somewhere. Okay, anyways, so cognitive dissonance, what it is believing something, saying, different things we believe, but then our actions being opposite to what we believe, to what we say we believe. It's this idea that we can kind of be these two different people, you know what I mean? So one person is saying, I disagree with these things, I see them as being wrong. And then at the same time, our actions being quite opposite that. So we're going out and we're voting for these policies that will continue to keep individuals in these bad situations, right? So while 100%, we live in a society, thankfully, where we're all different. You know what I mean? And that's our diversity. We all learn different. We're all touch different. We are all, we all respond to things. We have a response button that's different. You know what I mean? So yours might be in stories. That's where you're touched. And some of us might be in movies, that's where we're touched at, and we're compelled to act. I think that we have to do it all. We've got to tell the stories. We've got to read the books. We've got to have these conversations. Somebody has got to be on the corner advocating against this stuff loudly. We've got to do all of it. And we've got to be able to be willing to support it all, even when it doesn't look like what we do. You know what I mean? Especially because not especially, but when it's going in the right direction. Because if it's not going in the right direction, regardless to who's saying it, what they look like, we shouldn't be supporting it. But if it's going in the right direction, even if it doesn't look like us, as a Black woman, some of us in here as African-American women, sometimes when we speak and we say different things, because of the way that we say it and because of the body that it's coming out of, it's not heard the same. You know what I mean? It's just not heard the same. And because of our, like I mentioned, I'm a passionate person. I see all these issues that our community is facing. And I want people to know, look, it's harming us. It's harming us. I'll say things that are very, I'm gonna do things in education. So I want to listen to an education. I like watch podcasts and movies. I'm constantly feeding my brain. That's how I cope with life. I gotta feed my brain so I can figure out how do I deal with all this stuff. So one of the things I was watching, it was talking about defund education. So I've said defund the police. I'll say these different things because I recognize the connections to the harm and how they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So anyways, but for someone like me in this skin tone, this tone, you hear my tone right now, to say it, then other people looking on will say, okay, yeah, she's wrong. We can't support that. It takes all of us. Some of us are going to be those people who are ready to say it. And others are going to be those people who are going to say, I'm supporting you. I'm going to vote in that way, but maybe I just don't, maybe my personality is just not the one that's going to say it, but I still support you. As opposed to those who have this cognitive dissonance, who are like, yeah, that's great. But nope, she said it in the wrong way. So she said it in a way that I can't quite, that's a pet peeve of mine. I'll be honest. I'm going to be honest. It's a pet peeve of mine for someone to say, I could, but the way you said it, like, how in the world do you determine how I express what's wrong? How do you determine that I'm right or I'm wrong based on how I'm expressing it? How is that a thing? But it's a thing. Okay, so I can go on forever. It's 7:45, panelists or anybody else. Yes, ma'am.
While you're walking over there, Keisha, I'm going to say that one of my strategies as a white woman in the room sometimes is to just slow everything down, to question where somebody's statement comes from and to amplify the voices of people that need to be heard more. And that is hard for me because I'm also passionate and opinionated, and sometimes I talk too much. So,
Sometimes you might be a woman.
talk too much.
You were just reminding me of strategy because I've heard a lot of people say how kind of overwhelmed with how heavy it is and with how big it is to take on something like systemic racism since its inception, and it's still very ever present. And you start to dig and you just cover more and more. And but you're saying stay encouraged. And I think one of the things that you can do, and I've seen the zero waste practices environmental practices. Don't try and do everything. You alone cannot do everything. Everybody has to do some things. And so like pick that thing that you are passionate about, like, or where you can kind of feel step in, and maybe one thing that you're can push a little out of your comfort zone. And that's a good strategy for sustainable activism.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Self-care. Yeah, I absolutely, hopefully you all heard what she's saying. It's taking one of those things that we're really passionate about and doing the work around that. Like you said, it's an elephant. It's probably like a million elephants, and we can only eat one piece at a time. So, so we want to remember that. This is probably our last time unless we have one more.
And just, like how you said, like, some of us are out there saying the things, and some of us are there saying, I hear you and I'm gonna support you. I always struggle with, I obviously am here because I care about this issue and I know it's an issue, but I'm not one who's very eloquent. I don't know how to like say the right things to help people understand that there's problems that we need to address. So, I like hearing that, I can have an impact supporting, we all took the choice to come here and to read this book. And so obviously we want to do something about this, but it's like, how do I bring that into the places like, how do I talk about that? How do I bring that from here? All of these people who chose to come here and bring that to people who didn't choose to read the book or choose to come to this event. That's kind of
a very good question. A very good question. You want to respond to that? I came up. So how do we take what we've learned here tonight and and we're going to be learning more, So how do we, one of the first things, so I do a lot of teaching on racial equity and racial justice, racism. I do teaching in that space because again, it's a passion of mine. One of the first things I tell our allies, because that's what we call our white brothers and sisters who are on the road to understanding what's going on. And after they're reading it, they want to do something about it, which is exactly where we want to be at. One of the first and foundational spaces that our white allies, best ways that they can help us is to fully understand this issue and do the inside work. A lot of times, as human beings, because we're good human beings, we want to help others. We want to, we care about them, just naturally. So because that's just how we are as human beings, and thank God that we have that in us. Thank God that that's there. But sometimes when we don't fully understand the issues or how we personally are contributing to them unknowingly, then we do more harm in our efforts to do good. So the first thing we need to do is to do our own homework, to examine within ourselves, because it's so much easier, for all of us as human beings, just as for us to see, yep, you got a problem, versus kind of looking in the mirror at ourselves and saying, what do I need to do? How have I contributed to this? What am I doing in my everyday life that I'm not aware of that's adding to this? How am I, what am I doing? Putting that mirror on ourselves is so much easier to look at somebody else. And oftentimes when we're not aware, we will have, Black and brown individuals who we are partnering with have to stop us and say, hold on, wait a minute, that was good. And then we get offended, as white people, we'll get offended because, we're like, but I'm doing good stuff. But if we don't do our homework, then we again, and we don't look at ourselves, we'll be doing more harm than good. So that's the first step, for all of us, even as Black and brown people, we have been sold the same story. We've been sold the same story. We grew up in the same society. We still espouse and embrace white ideology. And we'll discuss some of these terms as we go along to be better understand. But because we kind of embrace those thought processes and that ideology, we operate in the same way often. And we'll be harming our own selves as well. So we also have to do our work to kind of better understand how we might be contributing to our own issues, Yes, ma'am, and I think that's gonna be our last comment. Well, this is my third last comment. And what I wonder if it was really too expensive.
I don't think that's what they said.
Yeah.
The cost of fixing it wasn't.
And it was also on the south side.
Yeah. And that goes to our disability. And now it could have just been as simple as it needing, too costly. And it could have been that was the smoke screen that they gave us.
Well, I think the underpinning of this whole book is that when we say we don't want to pay for things that are in our benefit, then they are too expensive for our representatives. We elect the people to represent us. And when we tell them it's okay that they tell us that it's too expensive, then that's where that comes from, right?
And since we all have been fed this same story and we all have believed it and lived it, my thought in coming here is somehow we need to create a new story. The end. I mean, the beginning of the end. Yeah,
Right.
our own story, the real story
Yes.
of how we are all one and how we can all do it together.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. This has been absolutely amazing. This has been absolutely amazing. So thank you, thank you, thank you. It's like 10 minutes till, so I won't give my whole long speech that I had to, prepared to give you. But I hope to see you all back on July
28th at 6 p.m. We're gonna do the rest of the book.
Yep, we'll do the rest of them. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Keisha,
Thank you
for
all.
being a wonderful moderator as well.
Thank
Can I
you.
just say something really?
Yes.
Just to speak on, just real quick, because you were talking about doing your own work. And there's an organization that's really helpful for that. If you're starting your journey, it's called Surge, Standing Up for Racial Justice. And it's actually to help, white people along in their process of that discovery without putting that burden on other people. And it's got a lot of really good resources. There are chapters. And they support like allied events. So Surge is something, if you're interested in that journey. Thank you.
You said Surge?
Surge, S-U-R-J.
S-U-R-j. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it a physical one or online one?
I think they have both. Yeah. So they have chapters all over the country. It's a national organization.